This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Jessie Torres. That's how I say your last name. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're having her on air for the first time. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. Thank you so much.
So we wanted to let our fans know we're a featured podcast on Newsly. So if you use the coupon code below Ghost, you can get 1 month free premium subscription so you can stop scrolling and start listening. This podcast will be available on Newsly within an hour. And if you use that coupon code, the Newsly will take your favorite news articles or podcast and translate them from video to audio so you can take them anywhere you want. So thank you for being on our program.
Awesome. So
you are a life strategist and a peak performance coach, correct? That's what
yes.
you. And how did you get into that business? And I guess from the topic that we wanted to have for this podcast for our audio listeners is from trauma to triumph is the kind of focus of what the episode's going to be about. And maybe you can talk about how that relates to that statement in the peak performance and the life strategist role you take.
Yes. Okay. Yes. It's been a journey for sure. I did not know this was going to be my path, but it did begin with a journey of my own trauma, right? And before I dive into what happened, I want to make sure I preface that what I'm about to share is in no way, shape, or form villainizing the people in my story, right? So I have nothing but love, forgiveness, and care for my father, my ex-husband, all of them. I just want to make that a point because this isn't about them. It's about my experience in my childhood and in my marriage and so on. So I feel in gratitude for all parts of my journey. So now going into the story, I grew up, my parents are both from Peru. They immigrated here from Peru and became citizens. And in that, for my first 18 years of life, I was having abuse with my father, sexual abuse. From that, I, didn't understand. What I understood was that I adored my father. I loved him in a way that, was beyond what it should be. I was dedicating songs to him when I was a teenager. I was like, this is just, I didn't know any different until it started to become so uncomfortable that I realized this is wrong and it's bad. He would take me to adult parties. He should have taken my mom. And, and it started to, open up. At 16, I tried to tell my mom. And, I use the word molest, and molestar in Spanish means to bother or annoy. And so he twisted my words and my mom never spoke to me about it again. And so for the next 2 years, I was still, trying to run from him. When I turned 18, I decided to rebel. I thought, I'm an adult, I'm a grown up. You can't tell me what to do anymore. So you want me home at what time? 12? Okay, I'll be home at 2. Right. And I started to just not want to be home because when I was home, it was just a nightmare. So in the process of that, I met this man. And like I said, I was coming home late. So he brought me home late one night after taking me out on a date. And my father was on the porch, angry. And I told him, you get out, told me, you get in this house, and proceeded to, have a rough night that night. But the next day, my then boyfriend said, what's up with your dad? And I said, what do you mean? He was mad because you brought me home late. And he said, no, that was not an angry father. That was a jealous man. And with that statement opened up Pandora's box in me to share probably more than he needed to know, honestly. But for 2 hours, I just cried and shared everything. And in that moment where he heard all of it and he still wanted to be with me, it blew my mind. I had already written a story that I was gross and disgusting and something to be ashamed of. No one would ever love me because I was touched wrong by my father. All of these things. And so when he loved me anyway, I was just madly in love. And we both were. He came from a background of very, a lot of trauma as well with an alcoholic mother. He was the youngest of 4, the only boy, and it was one of those situations where it was really traumatic. Like, he'd come home and find his sisters unconscious on the floor. And so when we came together, we said, you know what? He said, my kids will never see me drunk. And I said, my kids will never be molested. And we thought we fixed it. We were 18 and 21. And we got married and proceeded to do a pretty darn good job in building that home. However, what we didn't know is we were bringing a lot of emotional pain to the marriage. And so he was very explosive. He only knew how to communicate with his mother through vulgarities, anger, and rage. And so that's how it was in our home. And so I was the pleaser, and my dad, when he didn't get his way, he would not punish me. He would punish my mom and my brother. So as a child, I took that on as my responsibility. It's my fault if there's sadness in the home. And so I just wouldn't fight him, because then he would play Peruvian music and everybody would have breakfast and it'd be awesome in the house. And so I was like, oh, okay, it's my fault, right? So when in the marriage, it was like I just needed to make sure everything was taken care of so he didn't have a reason to be angry. But when you come from that lifestyle, it didn't matter what I did. There was always a reason. And so throughout the marriage, I was going to prove that he was not going to lose me, because he told me that God screwed up when he gave me to him, and that when God figures it out, he's going to take me from it. And so I would tell him, no, I'm never going to leave you, never going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you till I die, right? And in the context of that, it turned into just to that point where I was apathetic and I did want to die. The only reason I didn't take my life was because of my own kids, my 3 kids. I believe they're the only reason I'm alive. But I was wishing somebody would blow the red light. I was wishing that somebody would just do it for me, because from my perspective, there was no other way out. And in the context of our marriage, there was a span of 2 years or so where we had 4 sudden deaths of different family members, all tragically. He had an uncle that was 6'6.5" that worked on the Puget Sound, and one of those big ball with the big hooks underneath just fell on his head. Like, he happened to be under it at the right time. His partner at the time worked a bike detail. He was a LAPD. Came home from work, popped in a John Wayne movie and had an aneurysm and died, and left a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Then we got that horrible knock on the door, and my ex-husband's sister had committed suicide. And then a year later, my brother was murdered. And so we had that also to deal with in the marriage, right? So there was just very, very tumultuous. And I came to that point where there was just the only way out was death. And what ended up happening is I took this course at the local community college, and getting there was a story in and of itself. But getting there, what happened is the people inside that college class were kind to me. Kindness saved my life. I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't know to call it that. But what I knew is that they treated me, they all pitched together because I did this video montage, and they bought me a Best Buy card, which seems like it's the most basic, the most littlest thing in the world, but it short-circuited me. I was like, wait, why are you doing this for me? Like, I couldn't believe that they would just be kind to me for no reason.
Would help you.
Yeah. Well, my father had told me that people will put things in your drink, Jessie. They just want to take advantage of you. It's
issues. Yeah,
exactly. Because he was doing that, right? And then my ex-husband said, hey, Jess, subconsciously people want to break up a good marriage, so don't talk about our marriage to anybody, right? So I thought everybody was out to take advantage of me or to do harm. And when these people did that, whatever flicker I had left in my spirit, it ignited it. And I was like, I don't even know what this is, but if this feeling is available, then life is worth living. And that act of kindness gave me the courage to get out of that relationship. And then what proceeded there, which got me to where I am today, is an insatiable hunger to understand. I wanted to know why my dad did what he did, why my husband did what he did, and why I allowed it. And I started to read everything I could get my hands on. I was going to therapy. I was going to seminars, workshops, whatever it took in order to understand human beings and why we do the things we do. And from that, it's taken me through Coaches Training Institute, where I got certified, and then ultimately, 7 years with Tony Robbins. And then from that, with a marketing company to help business owners launch their business, and even, apprentice with a shaman for a year, and gone to India, meditation. I did all these things, but honestly, nothing has taught me more than my journey.
Yeah, the
At the moment, what's that?
The journey itself taught you.
Absolutely. The moment that a part of my journey or telling of it helped another human being, I was addicted. I was like, wait, what? Like they're telling me, hey, thank you so much. Where do I give you my $10 copay? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, because they walked away inspired, but I walked away more inspired. Like, I don't know. And in that moment, I felt the grace of God. And literally, he said, I could hear his voice saying, this is what I've been trying to tell you. This is why. And in that moment where it helped another human being, I was grateful for every part of it. I called my dad, I called my ex, I called my mom, I called everybody. And I just said, don't you feel, my dad was suicidal. I was like, don't, I'm fine. Like, I am exactly where I need to be. And now I live with that gratitude every day.
I think that's like maybe the common kind of myth about trauma is sometimes people feel like the people that caused it, like you'll have this really like hateful relationship, or you won't forgive them. But you've kind of proven that you've gone beyond that. That you found it, like the thing that's inside of yourself that was stopping you, that might have been external why you felt stopped, because people were telling you not to say it and keep a secret. But a lot of things, like once you have that breakthrough in life, that you get past like your own glass ceiling. Mm-hmm. I'm a cancer survivor. When I was 27, I had a level 3 sarcoma, and it totally changed my whole mindset on life, and why I'm here doing what I do now is not the same person I was before the cancer. So I can understand when you go through that kind of issue. The issues that you have in your life can be internal or external, or all kinds of medical. There's just things that happen where people go through their own, kind of trial by fire, and you
very much.
You come out of it, you start to learn.
Well, very much. I think sometimes, like I say, I don't think sometimes we know what we've got until our knees hit the floor.
Yeah.
Right. And we find that deeper resolve, or that deeper will to live, or a deeper level of perseverance or courage we didn't even know existed. Right. And my outcome is to help people not have to have those moments. There was a period of time that I was geeking out on near-death experiences. And when you listen to people's stories who don't know each other, all their stories are very much similar. And what they felt on the other side was absolute acceptance. And, and then they came back to the body. They're like, wait a minute, now I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, all these things, and I have to play these roles, and I'm in this pain body. And it's just like, oh my God. So how can we feel that 100% acceptance from our creator and live life that way without having to die?
Yeah, it's a very hard, like I think people go through a crucible, like I say, like the cancer, and your kind of situation was like, very similar. Not everybody feels the same thing, but I think once you have the trauma in your life, whether it's through a cancer or some kind of illness, or because of actions that caused that trauma from other people doing things, I think that once you break through and you realize that it's not your fault, right? A lot of times people get hung up on everything that's going on is like your fault. Mm-hmm. And then once you realize you forgive yourself, and you can kind of get beyond certain moments, like you have to love, it's like that typical thing people say, we got to love yourself, you got to forgive yourself before you can ever move on. Did you feel that?
Very, very much. And forgiveness is such a big part of what I do. And I think that one of the greatest ways to understand why forgiveness is important, because you will see what unforgiveness can do. It creates rage in the body. It creates blame in the body. It creates, will overeat. Like, it'll show up in coping mechanisms, because there's this hurt, and there's this anger that we're holding on to. And again, forgiveness is for ourselves, right? It's the hardest thing to ever do is forgive the person that never gave you the apology. But you do it because it clears you. And I think that one of the gateways to forgiveness, where true forgiveness, is when you're able to be grateful, right, for the experience, from the acknowledgement, not that right or wrong. Like, it wasn't, I would say it wasn't right to what my dad did, but it's what happened. So what else did it create for me? It created a very courageous little girl. It created a little girl that built traps, right? I was resourceful because I was wanting to be warned when he came into my room at night. I was curious. I was creative. I was resourceful. I was all these other things that also was developed in the context of my pain. And when I can start to see that, I could start to fall in love with the Jessie that went through it. And I can be grateful for those character traits that it built in me. And then I can forgive, because now I've pulled the good. I've pulled the light out of the darkness. And from that place of gratitude, I can now release, because to unforgive is an argument with what was.
Well, I think it's really interesting because I'm a musician, I'm a producer, and I'm an IT person. I design things, but I'm a creative person. And what I find is, like, in my art, that like the things that hurt, or the crucibles, or the really like dark moments, is a lot of artists I've talked to, that like that's what drives a lot of our work as artists.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, a creative person is able to take that. And I think creativity isn't just for musicians and actors. It's like, it's what you're doing. Is like you take the ability to kind of process things and find a way to do a positive outcome, whether it's art or literature or music, or like when you find a skill as a life coach, you're taking what you're processing, what's going on, and applying it in positive ways. I'm a Buddhist, so we kind of believe in law, cause, and effect. So if you do something good, good energy will bring good energy. Bad energy brings bad energy. And so when you do things that you can take something that was maybe dark and bring it into the light, as a songwriter or as a director of a film or a painter, and it becomes something that like lets you get through it.
Very much.
And I think that's the process. I think like the unshakable life is, I think a lot of creative people have that capability. They kind of shake it off and actually use it and process it to move forward.
I 100% agree with you. I actually have, my kids are all musicians. And so like, it is my belief that artists, creatives carry code, right? Carry code from the quantum or the field or God or universe, whatever your belief is. Like, because when you get into that place of that connection through music, frequency, vibration, it opens up universal intelligence all of a sudden, right? So it's like the greatest thing for an artist to be able to express those tragic moments in a song that connects to us so profoundly that we don't even hear it with our ears, we hear it with our soul, right? And that's what I tell my kids when they write a song. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you took me on a ride. I went on the ride of the frequency of the music that you created. Is like, like that. But here's the key. Like, one of the keys for people that are creative is to come from a place of love. So if you've had a tragic situation and you're able to find compassion for yourself, forgiveness for yourself, for thinking it happened to you versus for you, right? And compassion for the other, right? Like, what happened to them? Like, as of recent, I didn't share, but 3 months ago, my other brother was murdered. And, I again, a wrench in the life, but I'm different now. Like when my older brother was murdered 29 years ago, I lost my faith on anything. I'm like, what if there's nothing? What if there's nothing? I have no idea. How dare you rip the sky open and take my brother, right? This time I'm leaning into a deeper resolve that I know there's something greater than me that's telling my heart to beat. I know that there's a great divine, and I use God because that's easy for me, but it's whatever anybody's belief is. I just know that there's something greater, and that in the darkness, there's always light. There's always light. So I can be in deep, profound sorrow while noticing how beautifully my family showed up. I can be sad and heartbroken while noticing how many people were posting beautiful things about my brother. Like those are pieces of light that I will consistently seek. So for artists and creatives, the greatest thing you can do is come from that place of, even though you might have trauma or pain and you can create something exquisite, it's in the release of that pain into love, into your artistry, that you open up that divine channel that allows you to create in a way that is just electric.
I always felt like, that I'm tapping into like a muse. I'm attacking this idea, like Pete Townsend from The Who had this idea there's a universal note or universal notes that when you're a musician that you tap into, and that's when you connect to the audience.
Yeah.
And then when The Who had been at Woodstock, and they kind of felt like when they played inside of those gigantic crowds that they were hitting these like universal notes that hippies actually understood. And I think any artist, when you have that crowd and they understand your work, you're tapping into that kind of universal note or muse kind of thing that's beyond just the words. It's the frequencies of the music.
Absolutely.
And I've always been very much into all different forms of music, and I work with a lot of different musicians from different genres, and it's always been this kind of thing that we just have this ability to not even know what I was going to do. Like, I don't know what I'm going to write. It's kind of somehow it comes to me. And I think we have to be open to not shut it out. Because a lot of things, as you get to be a better, older as a musician, what we find is like, if you try to edit things out or not listen to what's coming, you don't have as good of experience writing. But when you actually are willing to be open and take like everything in and can kind of not try to overthink it. And I think that can apply to a lot of things in life. Like if you don't overthink it and kind of go with what the universe is telling you, or what you feel God is telling you, or whatever you feel the higher power, you can kind of feel nature, you can feel the world, you can feel Gaia, you can feel all these things if you open yourself up to it.
That's what I mean by being in a love emotion or compassion or love. Any of those heart opening emotions open you up to that channel. If you're in fear or anger, you shut that door.
Yeah, that's definitely. So what do you have a term called fierce grace, and I think we've probably been hitting on it, but maybe you can talk about how that applies to what we've been discussing.
Very much. Sorry, I have a tickle on my throat. Yeah, fierce grace to me identifies the polarity in energy. So I think that there's a depth of fierceness in all of us. I think that there's another level. I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
It's okay. Take your time.
I'm better now. Okay. Yeah, there's another level of fierceness in us, especially like I said earlier, in the moments where we need to do something to save ourselves, right? Like a stay-at-home mom that pulls a Volkswagen off a child, right? She's all of a sudden she's like a superhero strength, right? But because her heart calls her forward and says, I got to save that child, right? And all of a sudden, so there's a deeper resolve in all of us that we're not witness to sometimes. And so we have to be able to have an awareness that we have that available to us. And grace is coming from the place of love, of how to be fierce in your life, but coming from that most potent force with it, which is love, which is, grace, or loving on people, or serving people, or coming with compassion. Like, how do you do that? Because I believe that when you lead with the heart and you bring the fierceness to deliver what the heart desires, you're unstoppable, right? In that moment, you're unshakable. And if you look at the infinity symbol, it's right in the center, right? It's the masculine, feminine. It's the dark, it's the light. It's the positive, it's the negative. It's those polarity energies that live within all of us. And it's not about being in one more than the other. It's the flow of both. And how can we empower ourselves to recognize that there's a part of us that we haven't even unleashed yet? There's a part of us that's just waiting for that moment, or like me, that flicker of light that was just waiting for that dribble of love that sparked it so bright that it created an insatiable hunger in me to understand, right? We all have that deeper level. And then the ability to show up in life with grace, with care, with, falling in love with just the smiles on children's faces, or the birds chirping, or the sun on our face, and giving thanks and living in that place of gratitude and love. That when you blend both that and your deep, profound power of who you are, you're unshakable. At that point, it's like, just what do you want? Because you're going to go get it.
That's interesting. Because when I started my band, Family Electric Ghost, the whole idea of it was I tried to get in touch with my male and feminine sides, and I came up with this idea of a phantom. And I felt like as a musician, I could call my femininity and I call my masculinity, and I could use synthesizers to change frequency, so I could actually make my voice sound female. I can make my voice sound male.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
So one of the things about my band is like we actually started to make progress when I created this character called Josephine Electric, which was I'd written all this poetry and the science fiction book that had this character that was a female character. And then I found a way to actually make her voice her with my own voice.
Wow.
And then put her into my music. And it kind of started my whole music career because I was willing to do that. And people would say, well, that's kind of really experimental. And I said, well, I was fearful of it because I didn't know how people would take it. But I was like, you know what? I own it because this is what I want to do.
Good.
And I think a lot of times it's like you have to get beyond like the fear of trying something different or failure, because like in music, like almost everything we do doesn't work. Like you could write 100 songs and one of them is the one that works, right? So you can't just hang it up if they don't work, because that's the way it is. And so you build off of all the things that didn't work, and you're happy because they lead you to the next thing.
Well, and the thing about failure is, like, if you don't pull that courage forward and take that leap, you've already failed, right? It's like the because you haven't done it. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You were just dropping out a little bit, but yeah, I hear you.
Okay, sorry, it froze over here. So it's like failure. The fear of failure will have you beat failure to the punch by never taking action, right? Yeah. I don't want to fail so bad, I'm just never going to do it. And then I don't have to call it failure, right? And it's just like so silly, but yeah, those fears contract us. And here's the thing, I have a belief that, God made you this way on purpose, right? So you are uniquely made in your gift and in your power, and you're not meant to be a lousy version of somebody else. You're meant to be uniquely, unapologetically you. Mm-hmm. And your gift is going to land on people that mine won't, right? And that's why we're here to do this together. I believe I'm a student and a teacher at all times. At all times.
You have to always learn. I mean, but like in my career being an IT, I have to relearn things all the time. Like I do design.
Yeah.
And like what we did in the 70s versus what we do now. Like if I was just saying all I can do is mainframe, then like where am I going to be in a world with blockchain? Like you have to be able to go beyond it. So we always are students. In my industry that I'm in, we constantly have to learn. We constantly have to be aware that what we put out is not perfect. That's why you see software updates all the time, because we realize that it's never going to be perfect. And there was a point back in the 70s where we tried to make it as perfect as we could, but then we realized that like, hey, we can just keep on updating it. So like we know it's never going to be 100%. We try to, and I try to take that idea into my life. It's like, you're never going to always hit the mark. You just keep on trying, and you know that you have to, sometimes you have to fix things. Some things you didn't know what you know today. So now you learned it and you move on.
What's great about that is that we always need to be in a constant state of growth, right? Because if we're not, then we're probably dying, right? There's always something to learn and expand on. There's always something to see. Like I remember I went to the car wash and I sat there as I was waiting for my car to get washed, and I was watching these guys that were washing the cars and drying the cars. And I'm like, I wonder what these guys got to teach me. So I was just watching them. And the next thing you know, they were talking back and forth, and they were kind of laughing. And then one guy, snaps the towel at him, and then the other guy throws the wet one at his face. And I was just watching them have this banter, and I thought, oh, like, don't forget to be playful when you're at work. Right. That's literally what I walked away with. I'm like, oh, like they're just having this good time. And I'm like, that's awesome. Great reminder. Thanks, guys. You know what I mean? It's like it brings back the wonder of a child. You know what I mean? To live with that, because there's so much beauty. And I think right now, in the density of what's happening in our world, like we must be active seekers of light or good, or what's the beauty? What are the gifts? Right in the moment.
Yeah, moment of beauty. Because I mean, there's little moments. Like I think as artists, we try to document that. Like if I go and I watch, I think a lot of artists we sit and we watch and we listen, and we soak in all this stuff, and then I might have been walking around the city and I saw somebody, and I document that in a song because I have this image of what I saw, and I think. Like I saw somebody as a homeless person, or I saw this person that was crying, and then I imagine a story behind it based on actually experiencing it. It gives the ideas, and as songwriters and authors, that's what we do. Like we take these things that are always not us, but it's out through our lens. We take things that happen to us, and then we put it into this. Oh, this other person, I saw him doing this. I saw this event happening, and then you create work, some piece of art based on that experience, like the way you interpreted. Oh, I should have fun at work, because people should not be so maybe uptight that they don't.
Exactly. And how beautiful is that? Like the world is your canvas, right? Like you get to go. What you're noticing is humanity, and that's why music can touch us so profoundly, because when you're out there and you're kind of sitting with those lenses of creativity, you go deeper. You go deeper than the surface of what you're seeing, right? You go to, like you said, you can imagine a story around that. That's the piece that connects us right here to our spirit. And what's beautiful about that, especially some of the music my sons are into, and they're sound healers, so they actually use music to heal, but also the music that they connect with is new artists up and coming now that are writing music specifically to reach the soul, like saying things you don't have to accept not enoughness. You don't have, like people are starting to speak that into music in a way that is connecting to our own inhibitions, our own fears, our own doubts or uncertainty. And it's opening that door for others to realize that there might be another way, and they don't have to stay in the pain that they're in.
Yeah, 'cause I was always into like with George Harrison and a lot of his work. He was very much, looking into Eastern philosophies and trying to bring in something that wasn't British, something that he expanded into this idea that, he started doing fundraisers for people that are afflicted by different things, because he started to have more open point of view. Like I'm not going to be rigid and just be into the blues or just into rock. I'm going to expand and learn how to play all these other instruments. And I think that is what I've always been really excited about, is when people start getting into world music, they start getting into other cultures, they start bringing in other forms. I like what I call my music, I call it expansive sound, because I like to not be in one genre. I'm not just EDM or trance or progressive rock or punk, or like, what if you could mix it all? Right? What if you feel like, oh, I want to do something that's like bebop, or I want to do something that's like Tchaikovsky, like, if I want to do it, like, why should I be limited if I want to meld and mix things together? And I think that's how you move forward when you don't have those narrow focuses, that you try to blend things more.
Yeah, very, very much, very much. And it creates a beautiful gift to the world, honestly.
Yeah, I always like talking to artistic people, or people who have a mindset like your mindset is to take experiences and to actually work with people, and your creativity is actually being able to listen to people telling you their story, and then be able to empathize and then assist them in directing their mindset to get out of like maybe a blocking mindset, to get into more of an open mindset.
Well, and not just opening up the mindset, but also being witness to the other story that was also true. Like, what else happened in that moment, that dark moment in your life? You got back up, didn't you? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's important, because I think like, I when I had the cancer, some people, you can get really depressed. You could think, well, I'm 27, I got level 3 cancer, I'm not going to make it. Or you could say, I'm going to beat it. I'm going to do everything I can because I got a lot to live for. And so I had this mindset, well, I'm not going to let it get me. I'm going to go forward. And I actually changed a lot of things. I was scared of a lot of things in my life prior to 27. I wouldn't do things. I was scared of, opening up. And then after the cancer, I went and lived in Japan for 2 years.
Wow.
I finally had the guts to ask a woman that I really liked out, and I married her. And we had a kid, and we, so a lot of things that the shy me or the scared me, that eliminated because I went through that pain of the cancer, but it opened up my mind to say I had ceilings that I was putting on myself, that I was blocking myself, my own progress, because of fear.
Well, what's beautiful about that is that we have the ability, our mind is so potent. We truly have the ability to heal ourselves or make ourselves sick. And in that moment that you decided, no, I'm going to live and I'm going to beat this, you literally started to rewire not only your neural pathways, but also your cells. It's almost like I say there's a commander in chief in there, right? And he's like, oh, wait, he says we're not dying. He says we're going to beat this thing. So he's the boss. So everybody, all hands on deck. We got to get rid of this thing that's killing him. And it seems simplistic as I say it, but it is really, really true. I love Bruce Lipton, who wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. And I really love it because it breaks down on a cellular level what's happening at the moment of thought and what's happening in your body. And, all the tests that they've done with the placebo effect and, how people have cured themselves and they just gave them sugar pills, but they thought, right? They did a study that said, we're going to give you this medicine and it's going to make you really hyper for the next week. So just take it and document everything that happens. It's going to make you like literally like an Energizer bunny. So, they come back that next week and they're like, okay, tell us oh my God, I got so much done. I felt like I was so energized. I was going, and they're like, oh, that's interesting because we gave you downers. Right? Exactly. And they did the opposite with the other ones. They said, we're going to give you something that's going to make you so lethargic and it's going to make you so blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, that's interesting because we gave you uppers, And it's like, so because the mind believed it. I also referenced like Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile, right? It's like medical doctors told him it was physically impossible to do, right? And the minute he did it, because he had a belief he could, then other people had a belief now. And that belief made them do the thing. So there's so much potency in our mindset. And I think that we believe that we are governed by our thoughts. And we're not. We are actually in control of them. We just don't think we are. And so what's important is to come to that awareness of the thought itself. So it puts you back at the operating system of the mind, right? You get to be in control. I say, you wouldn't let somebody walk into your white carpet with muddy shoes, would you? Right? So why would you let any thoughts go into your brain that you wouldn't allow? Like I say, I have a big gatekeeper in the front of my brain. He's one of those guys in London with the big black hats that you can't make him smile, right? That's who I have at the front deck of my brain, because I'm not going to let a thought come in that I don't give permission to, because otherwise it'll deplete us, right? A part of our unconscious conditioning in our background is that we didn't know better, right? When we're children, we start to make meaning. We're meaning-making machines, right? Like go to kindergarten, happy, joyful, beautiful child, innocent, and somebody takes our lunchbox. And we immediately anchor, not enoughness. Like, why did they do that? Why were they mean? Why did they take that, right? And even though your parents can come and console you, whatever, the next day, you might show up holding your lunch pail a little bit harder, right? You're just like, oh, I don't want that to happen again. And we start to think, oh, it's not safe. What if that, and those meanings, I believe, start to create this heart armor that we put around our hearts to protect ourselves when we were that innocent, and that innocence was taken in the moment we started to make meaning about what happened. And so it's an unconscious conditioning we're not aware of. So if you live with a parent that calls you a loser every day, you start to believe that's true, right? Because, hey, you're my mom. You're supposed to love me unconditionally. You think I'm a loser? I must be.
Yeah, it's just a lot of walls that you put on, because if somebody tells you something and you believe it, and then you can't get out of it. I've run into a lot of people that are unwilling to like experiment as much as I feel that they could. As a producer, I would try to bring out that experimentation with the artists I work with. I try to get them to like go beyond their comfort zone so that they can realize that, instead of trying to be like somebody else, why don't they be like their true self? And really, like, I hear something in their demo and it's like, it doesn't sound like anybody else, but they want to go make themselves sound like this person in the top 10. I said, well, you should work on what you did in the demo, because that's uniquely you. And we should just make that sound better and just do things to bring out what you were doing that was different. Beautiful. And I'm very much a big fan of like emerging and independent artists that do things that aren't in, what's being done today. That's uniquely them. And I feel that's why do I want to hear like 10 million copies of somebody else? I'd rather hear you.
Well, and it ends up being a lousy version, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? When we're trying to copy somebody else. And what happens is we're chasing our worthiness on being like them, right? On being like them. So we never get it, because we're not meant to be like them. We're meant to be like we are. And so I love that you do that, because it's so important for artists to find their own creation. But sometimes we don't know the noise that's in our subconscious mind that's limiting us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I coached a lady who was an artist, and her mom's voice couldn't get out of her head. Her mom believed it had to look like Thomas Kincaid or it wasn't good art.
Yeah, I've run into people like, I got to play like Jimmy Page, or I got to play like, Frank Zappa, or like, and if they can't, then they just hang it up. And I'm like, what you're doing is uniquely you. You don't need to do that, right? Because I love the whole idea of like the punk aesthetic, because it kind of opened up the bands. Like, you don't have to have a 5-octave voice. You look at a guy like Bob Dylan; he didn't have to have perfect pitch, but it was what he was saying. And this is why I tell artists, like, what Dylan wrote down to me. He won all these Pulitzer Prize for his poetry, for his lyrics. Now, his voice, I find it beautiful, his voice, but it wasn't what the standard voice in music was.
Right.
It wasn't a Nat King Cole, wasn't a Frank Sinatra, wasn't at that level. And that's what the gatekeepers had controlled. So you had to have that level of voice to even be in music. And Dylan kind of opened that up, where you could have a Lou Reed, you could have a lot of the alternative bands that ended up coming out, and the grunge bands, because you can just be more you. And that's okay, because we need to hear everybody's voice, because they're coming. You get a Kurt Cobain, you get somebody that has a totally unique voice. And it's like, if they were trying to be somebody else, it would never be them.
Well, and what's beautiful about that, again, the artistry, why we love them so much, like Prince. Take Prince, for instance. Like, he didn't follow anybody's rules.
Yeah.
Right? He just was beautifully, uniquely him. And we love him for that. Why is that? Because the human spirit is looking to be set free. The human spirit is looking to be unapologetic. Like earlier, I said that total acceptance, right? How do we be completely us, raw and real? And if we're judging ourselves based on comparing ourselves to other people, then that we're in fear of judgment. And what we don't get is that when an artist goes out there and they're just unapologetically them, like Prince was, we fall in love with everything they do, because what we're seeing is the part of us that wants to be free like that and be unapologetically us. So as artists, I think it's the greatest gift you can give is to bring your style of music, your voice, which I actually will take my own advice from, not my own advice, but my children's advice, because they are the musicians. I love music, always have, but I never considered myself having a voice. Right. And they're like, no, mom, everybody has a voice. Everybody has a voice. And they keep saying that to my mind. I'm like, oh, I wish I could sing, and so they've got me this little voice pedal, and I'm working on it, but it's just like finding what is that for me. And I think that my desire is to create lullabies for adults.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Like how to create music that connects to the inner child in all of us. Right. And to be able to open and awaken that. And I actually did write one song, which was really cool, from an inspired ceremonial moment where the lyrics just kind of dropped into my head, and my kids helped me produce it. And I was just like, I said, you know what, if this song goes nowhere, it at least makes me happy. It makes me smile.
But I think it's like when you find your voices, like I had a lot of work, I was just a keyboardist for a long time. I never sang, and then I found a way that I was happy with my voice. And when you're an artist, you have to be happy with your voice before anybody is ever going to hear it. And that's usually a big process. Documentaries about musicians, about trying to find their voices. Hendrix was famous for putting all these curtains up. He never wanted anybody to see him singing, and I thought his voice was beautiful, but he didn't like his voice. He didn't think it was good at all. And there are tons of stories about him not being very confident about it, super confident about his guitar playing, but not very confident about his voice. The thing about Prince, that the whole story about him that I think was really interesting that I happen to know about, when he was 17, Warner Brothers said, we can get more Reese White from Earth, Wind and Fire to produce your record. And they thought he was going to be excited because he's a Grammy Award winning producer and everything. Prince said, no, I'm going to do the whole thing myself. I'm going to play all the instruments. I'm going to produce them. A 17-year-old Prince told Warner Brothers executives, I don't need Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire. I can do it all myself. And that's really like the start of his story, that, he was a very shy person, but when it came to his music at 17, he knew he was good.
Wow.
And he was super confident in his ability. They had no qualms about going and telling the people at Warner Brothers that he was just going to do it himself. And I think that takes a lot of like understanding who you are.
That's outstanding. I didn't know that story. That's a beautiful story. But how brilliant to be able to claim that and say that and then do it.
Yeah, it's like very rare that a person can actualize at that level. You get like a Lady Gaga, you get a Bowie, you get a Michael Jackson. You get certain people in music that are artists that can do that. There's a lot of other ones that never did that. There's all these other people around them. But you get these people who kind of very confident, or they know what they want to do. And that's always really, really cool when you find somebody that really knows what they want. Because some people are so like influenced by so many other things that they don't have the confidence to know when they have something.
Well, and that's good, like, to kind of touch on when it comes to, having an unshakable life. Like, if you could live uncaged, right? If you knew that you couldn't fail, how would you choose to live? Like, how would you choose to live without the construct of all of the muddy waters that muddies up your vision and you can't see because you got your parents' voice, you got your boss's voice, you got your ex's voice, or all these things that are clouding your vision from seeing your own divinity, your own beauty. Like, God bless Prince. He was able to be witness to who he was in that moment. How can we do that? How can we take down all that stuff? I call it filters, right? And see yourself unapologetically and fall in love with who you are, so much so that you're like, no, Warner Brothers, I got this, because I know what power I'm bringing, right? And we all have that ability. Like, I want everybody to know, like, it might sound, oh, well, yeah, whatever. No. Every single one of us has the ability to have that claim, because you were made in divine perfection. Every part of you, from the moment you took your first breath, you were made divinely. From that, Everything else is just the human construct of what we kind of told ourselves or are still playing a record in our minds. And we don't know what we don't know. Some of it could be an unconscious programming that you don't even remember. You're like, no, I forgave my mom for that. I forgave my dad for that. But it's something deeper that you don't realize is still a thread in your unconscious conditioning that's having and creating limitation in your life today. Those are the things I want to help unpack.
So the idea of an unshakable life is like you have to have like a touch with your spirit, your heart, and your soul. And it's not that you know everything, like nobody knows everything, but you know where you are at that moment. And there's always something more to learn, but you've got to forgive yourself for anything that happened, but also, have the confidence that you can make it through, right? That you're not going to let all the noise misdirect where you want to be. That you can.
All of this is about a spiritual awakening.
Yeah,
it really is. It's a return home, is all it is. It's a return home out of the human suit, right? And saying, who am I beyond this skin, beyond this body? What is that source within me? And when you're able to connect and commune, right, yourself with God, spirit, universe, whatever, and you're witness through those lenses, you're just like, oh my God. Like it's like, and I've experienced that with people in the moment where they're just like, they're looking and they're like, and I'm like, isn't it amazing? I'm like, is it delicious? It's delicious, isn't it? And they're like literally just in awareness of who they are beyond all the filters. And they're like children. They come back to that innocence. They come back to that purity of spirit. And from that place, look out. Like, it's just, what do you want in your life? Because you will create it, you will manifest it, and you will attract it. You will be an energetic magnet to it. It's the law.
It's interesting because I was talking to a friend, before the podcast, and he was like very depressed at the news and a lot of like things are going on in the world. And he was like, well, I don't know, how am I supposed to process this? And I said, well, what I trying to do, because I'm into art, and so I will give myself space to just be creative, and I can get lost in that. And I say, that's a really good healing mechanism. If you find something that's fun for you, that makes you not get depressed, that makes you not focus on the outside, maybe focus on your inside and feel good. Because you need, like exercise does that, but like creativity is like an exercise for your soul.
Yes, absolutely.
And I find that like if I'm playing on my piano, if I was depressed, then that turns into something else, right? That I can get out of that malaise and get to a better place. And I know that everybody can play a piano, but if you find something that's similar in your life that will give it, something that I think everybody's creative in some way. So you find something that make it so you're not just getting all this information from all these channels and all this noise, but you're not doing your own thing. Like maybe you should like disconnect from some of that and try to do something that's more like you.
For sure. And what I would love to say to that too is that, when you see what's going on in the world, and my son did that. He was, watching the news and he's like, Mom, did you hear this? Did you hear that? And I said, look, honey, I appreciate staying on top of what's happening in the world. And last time I checked, I'm not running for president. So I am going to, when I see what's going on in the world that hurts my soul, or that I hear, man's inhumanity to man, which is often what we're fed, then I get more convicted in how I can serve, right? Because we think we're powerless. If it's that heavy and that dark versus getting depressed, get empowered to go love on someone, go volunteer somewhere, go donate something, go down to the grocery store and compliment the freaking, register lady and lighten her day, right? And because the universal law of reciprocity, like the love you give, you get back tenfold, right? So if you want to come out of the heaviness and the weightedness, then go freaking love somebody. Again, your act of kindness can save someone's life and change it like it did mine. And those people will never know who they woke up I'm committed to building an army of angels that are here committed to save the world. And I mean that by doing what I just said. Go out, and instead of joining the density of the frequency, right? Because it's energy. We're all energy beings, right? If there's a lot of dense energy and now you go sad and depressed, you're literally feeding the very energy that you don't want. Yeah. So in the moments that you see that, acknowledge it, and I get deeper resolve, deeper conviction to go serve in a way that I, as one human being, can. For me, it's in service, it's in my business, it's in helping people out of suffering, it's helping turn trauma into triumph, pain into purpose, whatever. But it's also in my ability to be kind, to reach out to a friend, to say I'm sorry to someone that I haven't said it yet, right? Or to hug somebody, or just pet my animal, whatever. The more we start to show and give our energy to love, we will beat this thing, because light is still winning. Light is still winning, or we would have mass destruction, right? Yeah. We are still more. So if that's the case, we've got to amplify our light. When that stuff hits, it's not that it wins, it's that we dim our light. In the moments that we feel the heavy and the weightedness of the world, that's when we're meant to turn it up. And we turn it up by loving, forgiving, compassion, and care, and go do something that just fuels your spirit. Because if it fuels your spirit, my hunch is it's going to fuel somebody else's. And when you do that, we amplify the frequency of love. And I believe that's how we can change the world.
That is I'm a child of the 70s, so I'm very much into what you just said, because there's a lot of what I was into with like the Woodstock hippie movement and like a lot of the peace, love, not war, and the idea that you could go out and you could just help somebody. You could just go go and help somebody off the street. You go and give somebody, some lunch and they didn't expect it. Go and actually, talk to somebody that doesn't expect anybody to talk to them.
Well, and if I could add this one thing, it's a quote from Mr. Rogers that I absolutely love. It's not a quote, but I heard him say this. Mr. Rogers, remember Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I used to watch
right?
that.
Yeah. So when 9/11 hit and there was mass destruction and so much chaos, right? All the parents were watching those planes hit the buildings on repeat over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So the children were scared. Like, what are we seeing, right? And so he would get down at their level and he would look at them in the eyes and he says, when there is chaos, there is always helpers. Look for the helpers. And when you think about that, it's the light in the darkness, right? It's the firefighter running into the burning building. It's somebody holding a stranger's hand because it might be their last breath. It's those things that are also present. And so when it feels so heavy, look for the light, lean into that, and then go be it so that we can continue to raise and bring more light to the world versus dark.
Yeah, I believe what I try to do is like bring light to people who aren't being paid attention to. With my podcast, a lot of times I try to bring attention to creative people who I think aren't getting the attention they need to kind of push it forward. And I've been doing it since 2016. And the idea was I just like to talk to people, but then how can I talk to people and actually affect people? And podcasting has become this thing where you have this big community of all different types of people. And I remember somebody said, well, you should only have a very narrow focus. You should only do music because you're a musician. I'm like, well, I'm not just talking to musicians anymore, because everybody has a point of view. Right. And there's all kinds of interesting people you can talk to. So I've opened it up to be as expansive as my idea for music.
God bless you for that. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do, truly, because I know that it'll touch somebody. It'll land somewhere. And that may be the very thing that human being needed. And when we think about it, we have to ask ourselves, what if that person was our daughter or our son, right? Or someone we loved and cared about? It matters. So I appreciate you so much for doing this and opening that door up to serve whoever needs it versus just limiting the audience.
Yeah, I think because everybody, human beings should communicate, and being home during the whole pandemic as I have got doubled into this world, or this community of podcasting, which I find very useful, because like having conversations, long form conversations I find is it helps me. It's like my own therapy because I get to meet people from all over the world, and they tell interesting stories that I think every time I've talked to somebody like yourself, I think you bring so much knowledge, and your own experience is everybody needs to hear another human being's story, and how they
Oh,
process their life, and how they've been able to do something that's beyond them. And that's what I like about the people I talk to. Like what you're doing with the unshakable life, that is a really cool and positive thing to do. And I'm very happy that we had you on the program. I want everybody to go to your website. And for those who can't see it, it's https:// unshakablelife.com, and check that out, because we always want people to actually click the links or go to the places that the reference material that will be behind what we've been talking about all night. So go and check that out, and maybe you can tell people before we leave, like, what else can they find at that website?
what you'll find is you'll find an understanding of where you're at, and if you should work with me, because I don't take on everybody. And so it'll explain on if you're ready, right? Because I can't work with certain people that aren't ready for that kind of vulnerability. And it'll also give you a 45-minute, and it's like 30-minute master classes where you just can watch and you can see if you truly connect and if you feel it'll serve you. I believe it will. I also have a 10-step guide to get you guys started. It's a free giveaway that I'm offering to your audience that will just help you start to think differently, because sometimes we don't think that we can go beyond where we're at. It's just like, oh, it sounds great, Jessie, but you don't understand. I don't have the money, or I don't have this, or I can't do it because of blank. And I get it. And there's always a way for the committed, right? The people that are committed to having an unshakable life, there's always a way. And so this 10-step guide will start to open that door for you. I also do offer a really deep immersion process, which is at healandgrowrich.org. And that kind of explains a deeper dive into unpacking what could be causing limitations, so that we can get you completely unleashed and ready to serve the world in the way that you can. And if you're an artist or musician, I just want to thank you and honor you for living in your craft. I know it's not easy sometimes in the societal standards of wealth or whatever, but it's what is needed in the world. It is what will heal this planet. What you create from your soul, from your spirit, from your creative mind and your heart and your journey is what will shift the vibration of our planet. So I'm in so much reverence to artists, and I'm super happy to have been here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much, and have a great rest of the evening. And we hope everybody can watch this or listen to it on multiple platforms. It'll be fully published tomorrow, and we'll have a landing page for that you can share with your audience. So thank you very much again for being on the program.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.